You're at
that
4
was
minutes.
stipulated to us is 4 minutes, a total of 4 minutes rather than 5. So just bring that into your notice.
Cool.
It would be 4, right?
Yes, 4. I'll just like change the time here.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
4. Yep. Cool. Devika, if you can like inform Anjali or let's say Afreen that hey, the time has been shifted to 4 minutes considering they had a prior notice on 1st November or any of the dates that they are specifically implying. Right.
No, I'll just do that.
Cool. With that being said, Prime Minister, whenever you're ready.
Yes. May I start?
Give me a countdown.
3, 2, 1. A great good afternoon to everyone present here. I am the PM for the propositional team, and I would like to go for the motion. The House believes that the state government should prioritize rural areas for granting social welfare aid. First of all, I would like to start off with the stressing fact that we believe that the state government should prioritize rural areas for granting social welfare aid because the pros outweigh the cons. I would also stress on the word prioritize, as we mean to say the government should prioritize, however, not fully dedicated. Next, coming to the rural areas. What do we mean exactly by rural areas? A place like a village outside of the urbanization world with typically little settlements and based on agriculture mainly as in India. These rural areas are outside city bounds and widespread examples are villages. The difference between urban and rural areas are the problems that are faced by rural areas. Now coming to the social welfare aid. Social welfare aid is basically the assistance for greater good of people in forms of compensation, food, rations, supplies, benefits, etc. Now, the National Urban Mission that was launched by the Prime Minister in Chhattisgarh stated that the mission aims to spur social, economic, and infrastructure development in rural areas by developing a cluster of 300 smart villages. It has twin objective of strengthening rural areas and deburdening urban areas. So by helping rural areas build up, it will reduce the stress put on urban areas and make it a much more balanced regional development and growth of the country by simultaneously benefiting the rural as well as the urban area of the country. Poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, homelessness, crime, social evils, lower living life standards, lack of facility, service, and health are just few of the things that the stakeholders of the villages go through. This particular stakeholders involve the villages, the families, the communities, the rural, the area of people living there. The rural communities also are facing a disadvantage of the terms of legal and social protections. Their poor infrastructure also hinders the development of mobility and expansion, and they tend to not make connection with the urban cities, which are cut off their technological development and emerging markets more. Now, PURA, provision of urban amenities to rural areas, are they have 4 points. One is to facilitate road connectivities in villages, two, enhancement of electricities in rural areas, 3, establishment of cyber cafes in villages, and 4, construction of hospitals in rural areas, which is all for us a very common concept, but for the rest in rural areas, it's not very affordable. The PURA model of economic development was devised by APJ Abdul Kalam as a strategy for development of rural India, and the sole reason for this is under these categories, the villages will be connected by roads with power supplies, and with these parts, health facilities will also be provided by hospitals, which will open, and electronic connectivity to transfer knowledge will be facilitated through cyber cafes and expansion of information technology. Hereby, with so many cons, I would like to end my statement by saying the House believes that the state government should and must prioritize, therefore giving their full attention to rural areas for granting social welfare aid. Thank you, and I rest my case.
Thank you so much, first opposition speaker, for that fine speech. With that being said, I'll now be inviting the first opposition speaker whenever you're ready.
I was wondering if you could give a signal when the first minute is finished and when we're in the last minute, like a signal when it's 2 minutes, the signal when it is 3 minutes, because
right. Yep, I got a question. So I'll be giving timestamps, which is to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll just be like just finger raise.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
fine.
Cool.
Thank you.
This is the yellow going
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
clearly.
Okay.
Do you need timestamps? Me going ahead and raising a finger?
No, I think I'll be fine without it. Just warn me before, like a minute before the.
I'll go this.
Miss, could you just tell us like when this first minute is finished, because we need to give POIs, right?
All right, sure. I'll just. Cool. Okay, cool. I'll just like 1. I'll just do 1. Cool.
Okay, ma'am. Should I start?
Yes.
As people, we think that certain things that sound morally correct and pleasing to us would actually be practical enough to implement. A major example of the same can be social welfare schemes. This house believes that state government should not prioritize rural areas for granting social welfare aid, or in fact providing it to any section of society, and instead should focus on development. My main reasons for saying this are negative effect of social welfare schemes and how impractical they are, development, and taxes. These points will further be elaborated on by my second opposition, Rhythm, and summarized by my third opposition, Kia. Social welfare is the making of policies and trying to implement them to make people's lives better. As I stated before, social welfare schemes are like fairy tales. They seem sweet and morally pleasing to us, but when we try to implement them in real life, nothing really works out. A prevalent example of this could be the current situation in Chhattisgarh itself. Here, the people living a disadvantageous life are provided with food, shelter, and water, and etc. These people are happy with the treatment they're getting, and this demotivates them from finding actual jobs. This has led to a decrease in labor force and negative impact on the economy. This completely messes with the system of work and jobs, as people are getting treated and receiving necessities without working hard for them. This makes them believe that they don't need to work hard to receive better treatment. Moreover, social welfare schemes are impractical and are made through irrational decisions or a result of people hungry for money and or power. An example of this could be in a prior election, a candidate promised every citizen 15 lakh rupees. Well, he ended up winning, but no one has an account of if he actually gave these people 15 lakh rupees. And the motion or scheme was impractical as it involved bringing back black money. Therefore, adding development in the laws and economy, as well as employment of different social sectors of society, would be more beneficial. A development in the region would encourage people to work harder and encourage them to get employed instead of receiving free luxuries. A development in the terms would also equal to a better economy. Further, how long can the government provide people with these luxuries such as food for? My second opposition, Rhythm, will elaborate more on this point. The taxes paid to the government are dominated by the privilege of the society, and if we don't pay proper attention to these people, then it would lead to a major disapproval towards the government. So for my conclusion, sustainable development would be more beneficial than social welfare schemes for a developing country like ours. Thank you. I'll be open to POIs now. Ma'am, can I start giving my counters?
Sure, you can. It's the protected minute, though, very late for a POI.
Oh.
Okay, so as you stated that the system would be much more balanced, well, it wouldn't be, since if there isn't further development in urban areas, development in rural areas would be impossible. And half of the problems that you stated that rural areas face, such as crimes, the rates of crimes are way higher in urban societies because the sense of togetherness is not prevalent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, first opposition speaker, for that fine speech. With that being said, inviting the second opposition speaker, DPM, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready, ma'am.
All right, great. Do you need timestamps, which is me going ahead and saying 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, ma'am. Sure, that should be fine.
Cool, right. Whenever you're ready, just give me a countdown.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. Today I'll be the second speaker for the proposition. Firstly, I have to solidify in our case that social welfare aid refers not only to economic funds, but also infrastructure, better living conditions, the provision of security and stability. Need is the catalyst of the act of innovating, and giving. It is also a known fact that the development gap between rural and urban areas is a lot, and there is a need to prioritize aid towards these rural areas. There is a theory in economics that states that is also supported by many leaders in the field, that states that economic stability and security to a particular individual or a particular community is going to ensure that macroeconomic goals are established and accomplished. These goals may include stable prices, transparency in a supply chain, creating of economies of scale, and sustainable growth. It also creates the right environment for job creation and a balance of payments. And so here comes my first rebuttal towards the opposition. Um, do you believe that people who might not have the opportunity to work for a particular for money, or people who need some kind of basic aid from the government that is there to protect them in a democracy that they live in, should be forced to work for it and say that they become lazy? Rather, we believe that this aid is going to create a positive impact. It is going to create a conducive environment for them to create better solutions, to make better products, and to gradually increase their productivity and kickstart the virtual cycle of society that we all know. Security and stability also, of course, have a major impact on the psychology of the entire populace, which is going to help. Um, my next point is going to be that there is social welfare aid in rural areas should be provided to prevent the mass migration that might happen due to the lack of facilities available in a rural area. This mass migration is going to have negative impacts on rural areas, like a complete offset in the structure of the population, too high of a death rate, or the lack of any young population that is economically active, and negatives in the urban area as well, where there is a pressure on places to live, and there's tension between older and newer residents, or also pressure on services such as education and healthcare. So, just summing it up, social welfare aid is something that is going to help, um, the entire population in a rural area. Um, there is no contentment in the living condition of the life that farmers might live in, and so they're working extremely hard, but sometimes not getting the amount of pay that they have. And to and to and to fight this, to battle this social welfare aid is important. It is a necessity for the state governments um, to provide a priority towards these aids that is, as stated before, going to be beneficial to everyone. Thank you. That will be all.
Right. Thank you so much, second proposition speaker, for that fine speech. Just a clarification, POIs in the protected minute are not something that I probably would ask anybody to take up, considering it's a norm. Also, even if you want to raise a POI, people who are speaking are actively encouraged to take a POI mid your speech, which is to say, complete your sentence and then take a POI. Completing your entire case and then taking up a POI is usually you landing in a protected minute, which is to say, no engagement. Great. With that being said, I'll now be inviting the second opposition speaker to extend and substantiate the case on the side opposition.
Okay, so hello everyone and good evening. My name is Rhythm Rohani and I am the second speaker for the opposition. I will be introducing a couple new arguments along with elaborating on what the first opposition speaker, Kainat, has already said. And I will be rebutting around the last minute to whatever arguments and counters that the first two speakers of the proposition have set up. First of all, I would like to direct your attention to the population, the difference in population density that is there between rural and urban areas. We know that in urban areas, there is a higher population density as more people move there to find work. And this means, I take an example, for example, if you wish to provide this social welfare aid and provide this and suppose set up a hospital in rural areas, that means that there will be about 100, 500 kids that will be educated in that school, or wherever you're setting up that school. That means that less people will benefit from it, rather than if we had set up that school in urban areas. So the thing is that with population density, there will be more people in urban areas, meaning that more people will benefit, which is obviously for the better of the state, so that we can have that return of the money that we are putting in form of income that the people that are being educated make. Along with this, I would also like to direct your attention to the fact that urban areas have a certain awareness, that they have a certain larger awareness than what rural areas have about their resources. They live in towns and cities, so they do know how to implement their resources and use them to the full potential. Therefore, if we are applying these fundings and these fundings onto urban areas, it will be more impactful, and it will also be more enforced, and it will be more practical to do that, as it will benefit more people and it will make the state more efficient. I would also like to talk about and elaborate on the fact how Kainat said that people in rural areas have a sense of community. They have a sense of togetherness. And with that comes that if there is a lack of resources, or if there's a situation wherein they are weak or vulnerable, that means that they will still have the brotherhood and the community that can pull them back up. However, in urbanized areas, people don't have that sense of community. There's a lot of people that you can meet, a lot of different types of people that you can meet. This makes the urbanized areas more vulnerable to healthcare conditions and diagnoses as well. And another thing is that rural areas themselves are quite self-sufficient and work best in their environment as well. There are small businesses, there are cottage industries that work best when they are carried out from rural areas, as it leads to better mortgages. There will be more easier access to raw material. Rural areas also use subsistence agriculture, meaning that they can make their own food and consume it, the food that they're making themselves. So again, they are quite self-sufficient as well. Another thing that I would like to elaborate on that kind of previously talked about was the fundings that are there for this. So the fundings there, if we decide to increase taxes so that we can have fundings to provide social welfare aid for the rural areas, it's actually being unfair. It's actually providing injustice rather than providing justice. Rather than trying to provide justice to the rural areas, it will actually be making it more, which is the main objection of this, which is the main thing that we need to work on, is providing equality. We're trying to develop rural areas even more. It would be better if we put, it will be worse for the urban areas because there's more people there, there's more people that are making income, and they will be the ones that will have to pay the taxes, and they will be the ones that are most impacted. Do I have time for rebuttal? Okay.
Exhausted. Sure. Thank you so much. Second speaker from the side opposition for that fine speech. With that being said, inviting the last speaker to provide a biased adjudication. Government whip whenever you're ready. Yep. Third.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Great.
So when should I start?
Just give me a countdown, and whenever you're ready.
Yeah, and I'd like to take POIs in chat, please.
Sure.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hello, my fellow debaters and chair, respectful chair. My name is Advait, and I'm the whip for the proposition side. So the first speaker, I mean, the opposition leader, has talked about practicality of applying these. Don't you think that your own state, Chhattisgarh, has started up programs and organizations to build up urbanization in villages because of the lack of aid over there. I mean, isn't that practical? They've done it. And like my PM has said, and you asked us to focus on the development. Isn't this development? Providing aid to rural areas for them to develop? I mean, I think that's what my DPM has said. And you talked about it being fairy tales. I mean, if it's so fictional, how is it that your own state has implemented it? And it's not only that, it's that there's so many organizations around the world which have implemented it. And how can it be a fairy tale? Are you talking so lowly on the development of rural areas and the aid given to them? And you're talking about, and you're saying that when aid is given, they'll think that maybe without hard work, I'll still be able to live well. But I don't think you're getting it. So many people die each day because even though they work hard, they're not able to get that food. And like I think your opposition deputy leader has stated, opposition leader has stated, you talked about food being a luxury, and that why should we give that luxury to these rural area people, and because they'll just lose the value of it. But I don't think you're getting it. It might be a luxury for us having enough money to be able to afford it. But people in lower class, people in rural areas, people die. People know the value of food, and people don't have that necessity, don't have that luxury. So don't you think we should give them that aid? Don't you think we should give them that? And I think my DPM has stated. Yeah, I think my DPM has stated about the development gap between urban areas and rural areas. Don't you think because of this development gap, we need to provide that aid to the rural areas? And my DPM has also talked about macroeconomics for the same reason. And then that same thing brings up transparency, bans of payments, and whatnot. And then I think one person from the opposition has rebutted the fact that my DPM has rebutted that subsidiaries cause motivity. I mean, don't you think many people are still living because these tools and subsidies are provided from the government? One example is something which is happening in the desert in Rajasthan right now. Many salt farmers farm for this. Okay, can I take the POI in chat? No, okay. And one more thing from the opposition is the fact that the proposition denies the fact that one of the points stated by the opposition was the fact that diseases spread much more quicker in urbanized cities, which is why hospitals are more needed over there. But don't you think they're also a basic necessity and needed in rural areas? I mean, did you see the roads over there? There is no development of roads. And I mean, that is the aid which the government could give. And there's no hygienic cleanliness over there. So wouldn't that cause this to become unhygienic and diseases to spread faster over there? And in that small area, if people keep meeting each other, wouldn't that spread much more quickly and to everyone over there, causing the collapse of civilization over there? And one more thing is, you talked about the people benefiting more from the school in cities, but don't you think that school is also near in rural areas? Because without that, they won't have education. They won't be able to use things given to them to full potential. Like one of the opponents said, that the fact that they can't use it to full potential. They can't use it to full potential because they're not educated. And not only that, there's so many people who go out of villages to cities. So wouldn't educating these people actually help in that? And with that, I'd like to rest my case, proving that my opposition's facts and opposition's arguments have a lot of loopholes. Thank you. Thus, I think my side, the proposition, wins this debate.
Right, thank you so much, Government Whip, for the fine speech. With that being said, inviting the last speaker from the side opposition to wrap up the case. Here, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready now. May I start?
Yes, just give me a countdown.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Greetings to everyone present here. I am Kea and I'm representing the Chhattisgarh debate team. I'm the third opposition for my team. To start off, I would like to say that some of the arguments provided by the opposite team made no sense at all. Rural areas are not the only areas that face problems such as uneducation of people or unemployment. Urban areas may actually face more because they have a larger population. Thus, providing social welfare in urban areas can affect a larger population, as we have repeatedly said over the debate. Because a large part of the taxpayers live in urban areas and settlements, a lot of their taxes are going to social welfare. So I think so the opposition thinks that it is only sensible if the taxpayers' money is going to their own social welfare. Also, social welfare is extremely costly. So we can't just keep on providing social welfare everywhere. We have budgets. The government has budgets, and the only way the government gets money at all is taxes. And since urban settlements provide more money, the urban settlements have better accesses to existing facilities. Also, social welfare schemes are impractical mostly and are made through irrational decisions or fake promises. For example, in an election, a party might promise rural areas certain facilities to win the election, and after winning the election, they might even provide the rural areas the facilities, or maybe even not. But these fake promises can lead to the degradation of economy in a country because they're bribing the rural areas. And since also rural areas have a community and a sense of belonging, which is not really found in urban areas. If we interrupt the system, the culture, we're affecting their culture. We are interfering in something that is not us to interfere. Also, urban areas have much higher crime rates, and if provided with social facilities, they might reduce crimes. For example, if provided with proper food and shelter, yes, does somebody have a point of inquiry?
Yeah, I just had one point. So you stated that fake promises are being made and they're not really being taken into action, like in practicality. But isn't that why we are proposing that there should be a bigger? I mean, like they should prioritize rural area aids, and
I did not understand your point. Can
as in
you
like.
frame it better?
Yeah, because the prioritization is not happening currently for rural areas, which is why we are asking for this as the proposition. You stated that parties claim some things and they don't actually do it, but then isn't that why we are doing this? I mean, like it's not been taken. I mean, like your own state has done it, like I've said. So it's practical, but it's not just being taken into action, which is why we claim this.
Fake promises are being made to the rural areas and they are not being enforced. It's also harder to enforce new facilities in rural areas given geographical locations. For example, some rural settlements may be high on mountains that are very hard to access for anybody. So it is impractical to go and set up new facilities for rural areas. And it is easier not just for the government but for the people as well to upgrade the already existing facilities in urban areas and settlements. Also, development in the laws and economy of a country are more practical than social welfare and benefit. And it is beneficial to the population at large, not just rural areas or urban areas. The entire population is affected by the laws. And if we better this, if we spend the money we are spending on social welfare to better the laws that are already existing, the entire population, not just rural areas and urban areas, are affected. Thank you. I would like to rest my case.
Thank you
So,
so
in
much.
conclusion, can I just give a concluding statement?
Mhm.
In conclusion, it is more practical. In conclusion, it is more practical for both the government and the people if rural areas aren't prioritized for social welfare. Thank you.
Right. Anything said post that is definitely not noted, but sure, it was just like a thank you note kind of thingy. But anyway, cool. Thank you so much for like debating in this round. I saw yes engagement, and I could see constructive evolvement in cases. Fun. How do we now end this debate? We will probably do a virtual handshake in an offline tournament, which is to say, if you're sitting across the table, you will literally go ahead and shake the hand of the opposing team that you're probably debating with. Even if you're salty, you would still do that, considering it's a good spirit. So you go ahead and do a GG, which is good game. Cool, good game, everybody, across the houses, across the benches. Right. With that being said, I'll be taking 5 minutes. I'll be back ASAP.
Good evening, everyone. That was indeed a great match. So, why don't you guys tell me how your experience was? What did you all learn from this round? Yeah, please go ahead. There's no need to, raise the hands right now. You can have a quick chat with me. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it was pretty obvious. I didn't exactly have time for rebuttals. I knew that would happen. I had a feeling about that. But now I feel like I know my time management better and I know how to present my points in a quicker way. So it was much better. And also the points presented by the proper also great. I think you guys did great as well.
That's
Yeah,
great.
same thing here. I think me being the whip, I didn't have enough time to cover all the obligations I had with opposition. However, I think the points made were great. However, and I think we all could improve on a little bit of time management.
I feel that this debate was actually quite hard than the other debates have done because this was much more in a higher level with the terminologies. And I actually had to do like a lot of going into it, and we had to do a lot of teamwork. And I must say that the opposition was really good, and but they were very, stubborn at a point, and they really wanted, what idea they had, they laid out very well. So I want to say that was really good.
Are we allowed to like give feedback? Maybe just
Advait, I'm really sorry. I couldn't catch it. Could you please go again?
are we allowed to just give like some one pointer which we think if they did would make the speech a lot better?
Yeah, we'll just have Kaushiki ma'am to, deliberate on that and she will be giving the feedback, of course.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, great. So that was actually good to hear that, you guys have been walking a lot and the motion made you think a lot. You guys have somehow coped up to, balance out the timings and structures of the debate. Anyone else who would like to share their experience, their learning process, all yours. oh, I can sense there's, the kind of nervousness in the room, just waiting for the results to come out. Is it, or you're just like staying on mute and you don't have like a thing to share with?
I think we're just very nervous for the result.
I
Yes.
guess so. Yeah, I can sense that in the room right now, which is obviously it's pretty normal since it's the last match and you guys are like waiting for your results to come out so that you can continue with the evening. So we'll just give Koshki ma'am her time before she gets back with the verdict. And
I have a question.
yes, please go ahead.
Will we get to know the results and get feedback both? Or
Yeah, Koshiki ma'am is going to give you the feedback and her verdict, and the final results would be launched on the group shortly. So you would have to wait for that.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. So when you say verdict, it won't have like who won, no?
I think Koshiki ma'am would be the best one to give you that answer.
Hello, Devika, I'll spare you.
Yeah, thank you so much. He's back. So glad you're back.
Right, hello. Yep. I hope you guys did not like wait for too long. Cool. Right, I hope I'm audible, assuming that I'm audible. Both of these teams are pretty much sure, right? On the prop we had Karnataka, on op we had Chhattisgarh. Cool. Right. Before I begin, I'll say this again. In all of the rooms have said it again. Even if you lose this debate, do not attack your identity, which is to say, do not say that, hey, I'm a very shit debater, or let's say I'm a very bad debater. Cool. Apologies for that cuss word, but okay. Cool. Do not think that you're a bad debater in and of itself. You're a good debater, you're a nice person, growing, evolving, trying to make sure that you become a nice orator. That is your end goal. So even if you lose one debate, you have to think that, hey, debating is a ladder which doesn't stop you, which doesn't denigrate you. It makes you sort of go up even when you like lose a tournament or lose a round, because it's sort of a very evolving activity, a good sport that makes you pretty much, let's say, a higher level of intellect in and of itself. With that being said, uh, I'll try to talk about the motion. Cool. This motion had a hard binary. Either you had to go ahead and tell me that, hey, rural areas with social welfare aid or any sort of aid from the state governments is beneficial or not. The entire conversation about rural areas getting the social aid, or let's say a urban area getting a social aid, shouldn't be the case, right? It should be either a rural area is sort of getting a social welfare aid or not. Urban areas in this entire conversation, or let's say in this entire debate, shouldn't have been a primary point of contestation, right? Even if it is, you have to understand that 75% of India's population is under the abject poverty line, which is to say they cannot fulfill the basic levels of sustenance. They do not have even one plate of, let's say, rice, tortillas, or any of these basic amenities to even survive. This is where this entire debate becomes very, very important as to why the state government should have a social welfare aid or not. Yes, go ahead, questions. I'm inviting questions in the middle of feedback. Go ahead. It becomes engaging. Go ahead, Advait, even if
Just
I'm pronouncing your
just
name
one
correctly.
question. Just one
Yep.
question. So, in the verdict, will we get like the margin of loss by one person and who lost, or will it come later?
It'll come later. I'm trying to like denigrate the entire motion or denigrate the entire feedback as to how this entire debate went on both of these teams. I'll come up with MOV speaker scores, not exactly revealing the speaker scores because something that haven't been permitted to, and all of these, let's say, terminologies about, let's say, what is the verdict is everything coming at the end, considering you have to actively listen to what I have to say about this motion and where both of these teams are sort of going ahead in a very different direction. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. Great. Now, government's main push was, hey, it's going to be very utilitarian. What do I mean by utilitarian? Even in the previous room, I was like, I'm only giving this verdict on the base of how many utilities it has been sort of taken up on the stakeholders, which is marginalized communities, which is where rural areas have these individuals who are coming from a area where you have no levels of sustenance. They cannot survive without any sort of employment opportunities, without any state government coming in and helping them, relieving that sort of abstentions that they have been living in on a larger level. With that being said, what was the government case? Government case was, hey, rural areas are literally on the brink of extinction. Even if you do not go ahead and help these rural areas, they will be going ahead and sort of exterminating from the entire map. Considering how urgency of the problem is something that they established in the very first get go, what is the urgency then established from the very get go? They tell me that, hey, there are lack of amenities, there are lack of facilities, there are literally structural problems that I face, which is to say nobody has affordable housing, nobody has water to drink, nobody has anything to even survive on the basic, let's say, 1 or 2 dimes of me going ahead and literally surviving. To say I do not have any sort of structural benefits to which we have this privilege to even go ahead and even have a laptop in the very first place, right? This is the urgency of the problem established by the government. What is then the opposition doing? Opposition going ahead and telling me that, hey, sure, I understand that you have problems in rural areas, but even urban areas have a lot of problems. Their main push was, hey, urban areas have a lot of people who can literally have ROIs accruing back, which is to say, even if we invest them in urban areas, they will have higher rates of investment back in. They will have literally have higher levels of revenues, which is to say they will be going ahead and helping in GDP, making sure that the economy grows to a larger extent. Problem with the opposition case is, when the entire motion is set in rural areas, the point of me bringing an urban area, which in and of itself is a very privileged, let's say, urban area literally does not need a state intervention at this point of time. Considering we live in democracy, the main principle of a state government, or let's say any government, is to go ahead and make sure that you oblige with the constitutional validity, which is to say give basic sustenance, make sure that your citizens get pretty much self-sufficient, which is to say making sure that your citizens are resourceful, right? You cannot leave one part of the section of the society without any thing, and the other part of the society which is already having eminent resource, and to give them even more to make sure that they become that sort of top, let's say, 1% who has been going ahead and accruing millions or billions of dollars, right? Remember, Elon Musk lives in an urbanized area, which is to say metropolitan area. If the state government goes ahead and literally provides more resources to Elon Musk, or let's say people who already had resources, I will be creating more class inequalities in the society, which is where the main push of social welfare aid becomes very eradicated, right? Which is where government tells me that, hey, there are already class inequalities, there are already gender gaps, or there is already a wealth inequality that is persistent in the status quo. Sure, it was not very clear in both of these speeches, but I could understand the status quo that you guys were defending to a larger extent, right? Now, coming to second speakers, which is where the analysis and the mechanization comes into place, right? DPM tells me that, hey, understand, with the help of social welfare aid, we are making sure that the vulnerable sections of the society, which is to say rural population, village, or already the setting that, hey, the first speaker from the side government does, is these villages, these rural areas are pretty much in the ambit of the debate. The opposition had to go ahead and literally engage with the stakeholders and not create a different clash, which is to say you do not have to bring urban areas when the entire debate is set into a rural area, which is where you go and bite the bullet. With that being said, what does then the second speaker from the side proposition brings me? So the second speaker easily goes ahead and tells me that, hey, I will be going ahead and with the help of state government's intervention and making sure that you have an obligation towards citizen and making sure that they have their rights sort of like pretty much safeguarded, which is to say they have enough sustenance, they cannot die. They literally have to tell me the impacting that they give me, that, hey, we will be reducing mass migration, any sort of negatives that are already proliferating in the society, which is to say reducing any sort of social evils, which is to say poverty, or let's say criminal activities, which are pretty much coming in the environment, which is in and of itself not conducive in the status quo. Now understand, wool, these are very good impacts. But again, this debate went on a parallel, which is to say government was debating on rural areas having more social welfare aid and why it is important, and the opposition going ahead and debating on why urban areas are much more better and why state governments should invest in social welfare aid to give it to urban areas rather than going ahead and investing in rural areas. So this entire debate did not had a contestation point, which is to say you did not have an engagement which was active. Both of these houses were literally walking like this, right? You literally did not collapse at a point of time where this debate did not seem like a debate, but rather a conversation about which area, or let's say urbanization is better, or let's say ruralization is getting more better with the help of social welfare aid, which is to say this debate was entirely very sticky. What does then the whips do to me? Whips tell me that, hey, on the opposition side, they clearly tell me that, hey, rural areas have a lot of problem. We understand, but even urban areas literally have a lot of problem, right? Urban areas have good educated people, and all of these people who can literally have higher rates of investments, or literally giving everything back to the society, as opposed to rural areas, considering they established that rural areas are very self-sustaining. My problem with this is, if rural areas are very self-sustaining, let's say they have factories, they have all of these people working, and let's say self-sufficiency is something that they embark on, we wouldn't have poverty in the very first place. We have poverty just because rural areas are literally not getting jobs, are literally working on structural ostracization or structural stereotyping. A person who's literally coming from, let's say, lower class from a rural area, which is to say any of these villages in Jharkhand, any of these villages in Bihar, cannot literally go ahead and opt for a desk job in IT, which say a urban area provides you, right? Considering they do not have a specialization, they do not have a training, they literally do not have LinkedIn connections at this point of time, which is where class gaps, this entire rural urban gap is sort of exacerbated on the side of opposition. You tell me that urban areas have problem, which is why state government should go ahead and give them more sort of welfare aids to make sure that they have higher rates of investment. It literally goes ahead and exacerbates the point that the marginalized community doesn't have even one dime to live on, but an urban person who's been literally hustling in the industrialized sector, let's say capitalist regime, is literally accruing more benefits on your side. This exacerbates the entire gap that we essentially want to bridge on the side of government, which is where the point of, let's say, sustainability, having higher levels of resolvability, again, it was an impact based on, let's say, a fundamental which wasn't there, but on the basis of impact, on the basis of helping the stakeholders, which is marginalized communities, rural areas, which was predominantly the ambit of the debate. I pretty much say that the entire house stands. Karnataka takes this debate, and on the metric of utilitarianism, which is maximum number of people getting happiness, which is to say rural areas, the population is literally high, and state government's active responsibility to go ahead and help the citizens who are literally in the need of the hour, is primarily why the government takes the debate. Any and all questions accepted. Any questions? Side opposition, I'll take first. Cool. Was my OA legible?
Yeah.
Great. Government, any questions? Right. And also one more thing, as a general debater who wants to like have a good career in debating, it's okay to call out the other person by saying that, hey, their case was impractical, their case was ineligible, their case did not make any sense. Sure, it didn't make any sense, but tell me why it didn't make any sense, right? It's okay to call out that debater, tell me why that call out is necessary, why that call out is predicated on, let's say, maximum outcomes accrued on your side, right? Make sure that you sort of bring out comparatives as to why their debate is happening on which metric, right? Again, it happens as to how many debates you go to, which is to say, great on taking the first step of going ahead and, let's say, making sure that you become a more evolved personality in making good opinions and more informed opinions, rather than like walking on the hood, or let's say working in a herd mentality. With that being said, thank you so much for joining, and all the luck. And it was beautiful, Ajin. I hope you guys sort of learned something. And that's it. Any and all questions, suggestions, recommendations, general feedback, open to any get-go. Yeah, go ahead, Advait.
Miss, you were a great adjudicator, first of all. And second of all, just one suggestion to the opponent. I think when they made the arguments and claims, the thing was they were like gaps and holes left in between, as in they didn't clarify many things. So using those, we were able to actually poke more holes. So I think that's just one general feedback.
Cool. Sure. I understand that there were loopholes, there were fallacies. Again, I told you that, hey, call them out on logical fallacies, call them out on, let's say, overgeneralizations. I get it. But, even at this point of time, the government sort of did not fill the hole to a certain extent for me to buy it, right? There were literally logical fallacies or loopholes coming from both of these sides. But the extent of loopholes being very, very very, very large is something that the opposition couldn't like cater to, which is why the government took the debate, even by filling a
Exactly.
loophole in like 1 meter or let's say 1 centimeter, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Yep, go ahead, Manishka.
Yes. So I would like to say that you judged it very well and you did give very valid feedbacks. Now, I've actually got for the second speaker, she had mentioned something of population, and she was mostly stressing on the fact that urbanization should be funded and it should get better. And I think that was all she spoke about. So it was very hard. I get it from to be against the topic. But if she would have added something else, I definitely feel like it would have made a more impact than it already has. Then the third speaker, I would like to say that she was only stressing on taxes. So I feel like even though the topic was very hard, they were only speaking on more of money and financial needs rather than everything like all rounding it. To be honest, but I did feel that they all spoke it and conveyed it very well.
Yeah, the opposition was great, certain points were great, but the certain extensions that you continuously like harp on, which is to say, hey, urbanization, and let's say funding urbanization is going to be great, is not going to like exacerbate class divides, is something that was highlighted in the speech. But something that was coming great in your point was a bureaucratic inefficiency, which is to say red tapeism. Because of red tapeism, you have a lot of impracticality in actually implementing certain policies, which is to say Manrega or any of these prime minister yojanas that are literally coming into place, right? If this was your case that you could have ran on, I think you could have taken over the government. Impracticality, good point. Tell me, how is that impracticality literally making social welfare aids not being implicated in a good way? Which is to say, literally thousands of people stand in rations, and literally certain people have forged Aadhaar cards, forged ration cards, and that is why the authenticated public who really wants ration are literally eradicated from the population. That is why, because of red tapeism, because of a lot of people literally going ahead and saying that, hey, we will literally give you 1 lakh in your bank account, but couldn't because you're again political fallacies or let's say ideological drifts, Congress and BJP, all of these factors are literally contributing to marginalized factions becoming more and more, let's say, in the brinks of abject poverty. If this could have been fleshed out in your speeches, I think you could have taken over the government. But again, impacts without any sort of weighing or let's say without any sort of bedrock for me to establish something, I had to give it to government. Cool.
Ma'am, just a bit of a question. Generally, when debating, especially when it's this kind of a format, is it okay for one side to acknowledge the other side's argument, but then say that theirs is more important and stipulate the reasons why? Or does that just say that does that just go under the fallacy that I am you are like I am you are right, but I am righter? Is that as in, is that something that you noticed in this debate, or is something that we should watch out for, if I can say that?
Cool. I got the second half of the question, but again, my internet connection was really unstable. I lost you in between. So if you could like come again, just like come again. I'll
Right.
take you, Advait.
So generally, when we're debating, is it okay for one side to acknowledge the other side's argument, say that you are right, but that I am righter, if I can use that word? If so, did you notice that in this debate, in our argument, and is it okay to do so, just generally?
Yep, it's lovely to do so, right? I mean, if one, okay, I'll take a very simple example and also I'll come to this entire debate as well. Okay, this house prefers apples more than oranges. Simple example, right? Now, I'm a prime minister, I go and tell that, hey, apples have iron, apples have all of these nutrients, apple subsidiates to you becoming a good person who has a good immunization, right? That is my argumentation. Leader of opposition who's a good debater comes in and gives a trade-off, which is where trade-off comes into place. All of these words are pretty much like difficult to understand, gets pretty much confusing and muddled up, but I'll just like try to simplify it, right? Leader of opposition says, sure, good, apples are great, good for immunization, but apple has this seed called cyanide. If crushed, it can literally lead you to death. Sure, you can be good, but you do not have to underestimate the demerits at this point of time. What are you asking is one person glorifying their case to an extent that they forget that other side exists, right? So you sort of go ahead as a pragmatic person. In any debate, if a person says, hey, this side is bad, I am the only good person, that is not a debate. That's just literally a fighting that's happening, a conflict that cannot be resolved without a good conclusion. Debate happens on this person going ahead and taking their case, taking the best case that they have, and then destroying it by co-opting it, right? This is where trade-off comes into place. And what did LO do? LO went ahead and say, give me Apple, I'll take up the best thing that you're taking about Apple, tell you why being the best in Apple is something that's not going to be better for your health, even if you go ahead and let's say a doctor is subscribing you, right? So take their best case. Here, now coming to the second part of the question, I hope you understand it, right? It's very difficult for me to like make out definitions at this point of time. But yeah, go. In this debate, what did now happen? The best case that the opposition was providing me, that urbanization is going to be better, people in urban areas are more educated, and if state governments go ahead and give more social welfare aid to these literate people, they will literally be obliged to the state governments to return it back in higher investment, or let's say in higher amount, which is to say they will have higher levels of opportunities, or let's say a higher return of investment at this point of time. Best case, what you could have done, you try to do it, but again, a fleshing that needs to happen is, sure, this will happen, but this is a very privileged concept. Which sort of people will do that? 2 to 3 people are literally the most educated, or let's say a chunk of people, let's say 10% of the entire urban population is very educated. They get all of these social welfare aids, they are pumped in all of these resources. Now they're literally becoming inflated Ambanis, right? Now inflated Ambanis are literally going to give you that sort of money, but that money is sort of circulating in a very privileged bubble, right? It is not going to the person who's literally needy, right? So this bubble is sort of needs to be broken for you to bridge the class divide that you guys talked about, but did not assert or sort of break the virtuous, or let's say break the vicious cycle that these guys were trying to make to a larger extent, right? So this is how you going ahead and taking up their best case is taken up, destroy that best case, and then go ahead and tell me that why their case becomes pretty much null and void, and why our resolvability, or let's say solvency on 3 characterizations become the winning debate. That's it. Cool, go ahead, Advait. Any questions?
Yeah.
Ayman?
Oh.
So sorry, Advait.
No questions, ma'am. Thank you. That was good feedback.
Just clarifying one thing for Ayman's question. I have another question, but clarifying something for Ayman's question. I think it's broken down to need, action, and outcome, right? So, like, if you agree with the need and action, you can say the outcome won't be the same, or it won't be the best outcome, and you don't agree with what will happen. Or, like, you can say the action is not right. Or, like, you can say, this is a case scenario we can say it off. You can say, I agree with need or action, or I agree with need and outcome, but I don't agree with the action or outcome, one of those. So, or need, if it's actually that.
Cool, I understand your question. Need, action, outcome, sure. But in this debate, the opposition's action, the opposition's need was flawed, hence the outcome was flawed, right? You cannot literally go ahead and say that, hey, I'll be going ahead and providing all of these resources to urban people because they are more educated than rural people, right? The need is false. Urban people literally, why do they need social welfare aid when they're literally socially well off, right?
Exactly.
That is the need. Exactly. So their need becomes flawed. Their action of going ahead and making convincing the state government to go ahead and pumping all of these resources to the, let's say, not needy individual are literally flawed. Hence, the outcome becomes very narrow and pigeonholed. So this entire need, action, outcome theory becomes entirely absent in certain debates, right? Where does this need, action, outcome becomes pretty much irrelevant is a simple binary debate. This either or this, or an X over Y motion, right? Which is to say, hey, the cycling in Amsterdam is better than riding a car in Delhi because of pollution, right? You can literally have a state action funding going ahead and banning cars, or let's say banning carbon footprints, or let's say reducing carbon footprints, or like giving up actions, let's say, odd even, all of these methods to reduce the need, let's say the need of going ahead and literally just like racing cars in Delhi, causing grave incidents of accidents and thus reducing the life, or let's say the longevity of life that people are living by crossing road, right? So this is where the need action outcome becomes something that can be plausible. Again, not something that can be applicable to a lot of debates, considering it can be a flawed argumentation. Only a linear thought is going in. There is no further understanding, or let's like a wider spectrum that you have to take in, which is where stakeholders become a primary incentive, right? That's it. Any questions? Further questions? Sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing which I've noticed in this debate format, I like the original Asian parliamentary debate is 7.5 minutes and all of that. But like one thing which I noticed is that in this particular debate scenario, the opposition deputy leader is allowed to bring in new points, but this is like really hard for the government because they won't be able to rebuttal them with like any new information in as a whip, because I'm not allowed to. But then again, I think in traditional Asian parliamentary debates, they're not allowed, the opposition deputy leader is not allowed to bring in new points, right?
Oh, cool. You need like a structural understanding for this. All of these things can happen still. Why? Tell you. First speaker has the responsibility of going ahead and carrying the motion great. Like, hey, give me the definition, give me what does the word look like, give me all of these people that you want to
But
benefit.
I agree, but then the problem is like if the deputy leader brings up any new point, it's very hard to rebut it with new info as a whip,
You
because
can.
but
You
I'm not
can.
allowed to, right, with as a whip to bring up any new info.
You cannot bring, okay, this is like a strategy again. A lot of people, like I go as a whip most of the times with my team, and suddenly I hear DLO going in and saying some absolutely new stuff, which is again a very dump on their side. Like the PM did not mention it, and suddenly a DLO is bringing it, right? Or let's say a LO did not mention that important point of contestation, and suddenly the DLO brings in out of the blue, right? I'm unprepared. So as a whip, I go ahead and connect the previous point of prime minister. I'll take a very simple example, which is to say, hey, this house prefers Apple over Samsung, right? So Apple over Samsung, great. So opposition says, DLO specifically comes in and says that, hey, Samsung is still employing a lot of people in Korea or Japan. I don't know where is that information coming from, right? It's absolutely no, right? It's basically Samsung is a third world product, like a third world origination, basically from many of these, let's say, Eastern countries to a larger extent. And suddenly that is the point I have to handle. Now, my entire point of argumentation from the PM was, hey, Apple is a new brand. Like Apple is absolutely bringing new forms of ingenuity. It's upgrading itself every month, right? You literally have higher levels of consumer market, right? Samsung is literally going away from the market, considering it cannot renew itself again and again, right? Now, how do I counter that point of, let's say, Samsung employing a lot of people? I go ahead and tell them, like, hey, my PM and my DPM mentioned that why Apple is monopolizing the market. Now, even if you go ahead and tell me something false, like, hey, Samsung is still employing from Eastern nations, you have to tell me why that is exploitative. If you understand the market understanding of the trends, it's only Apple in the market, right? Literally, rich people are going ahead and taking up Apple 13, 14, 15, or let's say any of these, let's say, identities coming into altogether. Now, suddenly, if a person goes ahead and tells me that, hey, Samsung has a good market rate, and a lot of people are still getting employed, and Samsung is basically exploitative, because all of these multinational companies are literally going ahead and exploiting the marginalized sections, basically making sure that they give plastic, or let's say do any of these small marginal will give exploitative charges on them, right? So again, it's a very factual inaccuracy of me to go ahead and literally say that, hey, Samsung is bad or Samsung is exploiting their labors. I cannot do so outrightly, but even if I have an understanding of MNCs going ahead and exploiting companies, or like exploiting their labors, or let's say employees to a larger degree, I can literally connect that point that, hey, Apple has monopolized the market. At no point of the time the DLO can prove that Samsung is making sure that you have higher degrees of employability in third world nations, considering third world nations are literally having let's say target, or let's say a connection not a connection, but let's say a business model applied with Apple, considering Apple is growing and Samsung is getting eradicated from the entire market. I hope you understand it. So you have to connect that entire thingy. You can also bring in more examples, but again, new information, entirely new information, which baffles the other team that hasn't been talked about, is something that is regrettable. But something that has already been spoken, again, have to connect with the PM and make sure that you identify the basic nuanced fallacies that come into their argumentation. I hope I was of a help here.
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions?
No, not really. You covered pretty much everything. And I totally agreed with what you said and the feedback as well.
Right. Thank you so much. Opposition was good. Nice. Again, case is something like, again, speakers are going to be great. You guys talk good, but then if you guys talk more sense, you become good debaters. That's it. That's the only fundamental that Hamza, Tariq Chaudhary, or let's say even Ashish Kumar applies in his entire debating strategy of WUDC. Coolly. Nice. Any more questions? Cool. Thank you so much for joining. All the best for further rounds. I hope you make it to the finals, and all the best to both of the teams. GG and good night.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Miss Devika,
Well
to
done,
get
everyone.
Miss Devika, to get into
Oh.
semis, they take the top 4 scores, right?
I have no clue. I mean, okay, I'm not in the
We'll just
tabby
get
right
back
now.
to you, Advait. We'll just get back to you. Just leave a little bit things for the suspense and surprise, right?
Okay, and Miss, when can you finalize it? Because I'll just have to clear my calendar.
Yeah, most probably by tomorrow morning. We'll be getting
Okay,
it.
sure. Thank you.
No worries. All the best. All the best, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, how are you? Long, hectic evening it has been.
Yep. So I'll just like take up dinner because my PG shuts down.
Yeah, please do. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure, talking to you. We'll catch up really soon. Cool.
Yep. Take care. Take meds on time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Take care.